Christ Grace Unlimited is a ministry dedicated to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, worshiping God in spirit and in truth, through Christ's sound doctrine, exalting His word above all things. The Bible says in Romans chapter 10, verse 14 through 15, "How then shall they call on Him whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in Him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent?" We welcome all of you to the CGU, Christ Grace Unlimited, spreading the gospel of grace and love to all. We thank you, and remember, Christ is still on the throne.
Hello everybody, welcome to CGU, Christian Gamers Union. My name is Trust in Christ, and today we're going to finish up the story of Ruth, which is a story that connects to the genealogy of Christ, and this is a good love story. Alright, so we're going to get started. Then Naomi and her mother-in-law said unto her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee?" So, as we left off, to pretty much recap, Naomi is the mother-in-law. She's an Ephraimite. Her two sons died. And pretty much Ruth is the daughter-in-law of Naomi that married one of her sons. Naomi and Oprah, married, and pretty much a famine hit the land of the Moabites where pretty much Naomi, Ruth, and her two sons were. And her two sons died, and Naomi had no children. Oprah had no children. And pretty much Naomi told her two daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Oprah, "Leave me. Go to the land of your gods and of your people, and leave and find another husband, so I may die." Oprah left, but Ruth stayed with her and didn't leave her, and stayed with her and her God, which is our God, Yahweh. So, a man named Boaz, came around and was in that land. And pretty much what you see, Boaz, he was from the tribe of Judah, heard of the story of Ruth sticking with her mother-in-law, and pretty much saved both of them by giving food, to Ruth to bring to her house. So where we're leaving off now is pretty much Naomi is going to instruct her daughter-in-law, Ruth, of what she should do next. And we're going to conclude this story. Alright. Ruth, chapter 3, verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he would know of barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto the men, until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie. And thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do." And she said unto her, "All that thou sayest unto me, I will do." Alright, so remember, from what we read last time, Boaz knew of all the good that Ruth did unto her mother-in-law Naomi. And he knew, as from what we read, that Ruth was a virtuous woman. And one thing you can see, and we can look at this as a love story, pretty much how pursuing goes. Pursuing and chasing is a two-way street. Boaz did a kind gesture towards Ruth because of what she done. And now Guess what? The mother-in-law is instructing Ruth, in how she should pursue Boaz. Adorn yourself, wash yourself, present yourself before Boaz, and he's going to instruct you what to do. Lie down. Don't interrupt him. Don't get in his way. Don't be no whore. And he will tell you what to do. Because remember, Ruth has no children. Naomi, her sons are dead. And during that time, if you weren't married, and especially if you had no children, that was a death sentence. Back then, you did not have, Social Security to fall back on. You didn't have the nursing home to depend on with the elderly. Pretty much, if you had no family, it was a death sentence. So with women, they needed, and not just women, they needed males, sons, family to take care of them when they became of age or when they got sick. So that's just how things work. So for her survival, pretty much, Naomi is teaching Ruth to position herself for Boaz. All right. And she said unto her, all that thou sayest unto me, I will do. And she went down unto the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and all his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid, and turned himself and said, a woman lay at his feet? And he said, who art thou? And she said and answered, I am Ruth, thy handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, blessed be thou of the Lord, O my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And guess why? Because this was proven through Naomi's actions. She didn't come as some whore towards Boaz. She was kind. She was pleasant. She didn't come on to him as a whore. And guess what? Boaz recognized that and was pleased with that. All right. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doeth know what thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that I will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman well. Let him do unto thy kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of thy kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of the kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning. So you got a place to lie till morning. And she lay at his feet until morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that thy woman came into the floor. And he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her. And she went into the city, and when she came unto her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou? My daughter. And she told her all that the men had done to her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Then she said, sit still, my daughter, until thou know the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. Because remember, Ruth wants marriage. Ruth wants a covering, a protector. Either a close kinsman in that town would do it, and if there's no one there to do this deed, Boaz will become Ruth's husband. All right, verse 4. And pretty much, Boaz wants this woman because she's a virtuous woman. And let's remember, how did Boaz find out about Ruth? God showed it to him, as we read in chapter 2. God showed that to Boaz, which is why he, helped Naomi and Ruth in the first place. Chapter 4, verse 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsmen of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, not ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsmen, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land which was our brother's Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. For if thou wilt redeem it besides thee. I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi? Thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabites, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar my own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to myself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner in the former time of Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbors. This was a testimony in Israel. I'm not going to get too deep in that, but that's how contracts were confirmed. And you kind of see this sometimes in, ancient, cultures. When you made a contract agreement, you took off your shoe and you pretty much threw it down. That's how contract agreements work. Or you would see, the pouring of salt. And pretty much today we do handshakes. All right. And pretty much what Boaz is doing, he's redeeming the land to Naomi and Ruth. And remember, Naomi, when we look, let's go back to chapter 1. She's an Ephraimite. Had 2 sons. Now Ruth, she's of the tribe of Moab. So you have Naomi, an Ephraimite. Then you have Ruth from Moab, and Oprah. But Oprah is gone. All right. Back to where we left off at. All right. All right. Now this was the manner in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing. For to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that Elimelech's and all that shillings and Mahlons of the hand of Naomi. Remember, that's her husband and her 2 sons. So this is his kinsmen. These are Israelites. Ruth is not an Israelite by blood, but she's an Israelite through marriage. And let's remember, the Moabites is the children of Lot. That's Abraham's nephew. Let's remember that the Moabites come from Lot, Abraham's nephews. So this is not a Canaanite, this is not a Amalekite, this is not a Philistine, this is a Moabite. someone that is close to kin to them. That's why they're kinsmen. So let's not get confused on that. All right. Moreover, Ruth, the Moabites, the wife of Malone, have I purchased to be my wife. Yes, he purchased him to be his wife. To raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren. And from the day of the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day. Now, why is he saying this? In Israel, in his customs, we're going to go to Deuteronomy 25. Since the tribe of Ephraim was cut off because, Naomi's two sons died. And not only they died, Ruth had no children out of this. Pretty much who was going to redeem the land? Was it going to go to Boaz? No. In the custom of Israel, we see in Deuteronomy chapter 25, let me go to it. We see the levirate marriage, which is a marriage when pretty much your brother, dies and he has a wife. Typically, one of the brothers, the most well-off brother, would marry the wife. So here we go. If a brethren dwell together and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and to perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn, so only the firstborn child, which she beareth, shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders, and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up his brother out a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him, and speak unto him. And if he stand to it, and say, I will not take her, then his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and shall loose his shoes from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. Pretty interesting. Now back to the story. So pretty much, this was a custom that Boaz was fulfilling, and to be honest, he didn't have to do this, but he's redeeming Naomi's house, the Ephraimites. So that's why he's saying he's resurrecting the dead, his dead kinsmen, because the Ephraimites, those two sons of Naomi, is dead, and pretty much he's buying the land, he's restoring, and guess what? He's giving, Naomi hope out of this. So the children, the firstborn that's coming out of the marriage of Ruth, is going to be raised in her two sons' name, as the custom says in Deuteronomy 25. Alright, so that's what that means. Alright, so the marriage is about to happen. So where I leave off at? Verse 10. Alright, moreover, Ruth, the Moabites, the wife of Malone, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place ye are my witnesses this day. And remember, he got the elders, and then in Deuteronomy 25, you see the elders had to be present when this type of transaction happened. And all the people that were in the gates, the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and thou worthily in Ephraim. Excuse me. Let me read that again. Did build the house of Israel and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, and which Tamar bare unto Judah, which that's the famous story of Onan, where he spilled his seed, and Tamar pretty much disguised herself as a harlot, and pretty much Judah slept with her and gave her seed. That's pretty much what that is talking about, the barren women within the history of, Israel. Of seed which the Lord shall give thee, this young woman. Alright, we're almost done. Verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And look at this closely. So this son right here is going to be raised in behalf of Naomi's bloodline. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And this is quite ironic because, remember, Naomi thought God, was pretty much cutting her off, and that she was going to just die, the old woman, with no kinsmen and no sons. But guess what happened? God restored her. God, sent Boaz her way to her daughter-in-law, which didn't abandon her. Blessed be the Lord, which have not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thy old age. For thy daughter-in-law which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, have borne him. And Naomi took the child and laid it upon her bosom. And it became to nurse unto it. And the woman, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nashon, and Nashon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. So pretty much Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz is in the genealogy of Christ. Alright, so that's the conclusion of the story. Now, what can we get out of this story? And I'll say it like this: as far as, which sex gets, the most out of this, it'll have to be the women. This teaches, women how to pursue a man, to put it shortly. Number one, if you are in need of a man, guess what? Praying for a man is good, you should. But as you see in scripture, you have to work. You have to be virtuous. You have to be presentable. And I'm not talking about looks. You have to, pretty much let yourself be known, because guess what? Ruth did not just expect Boaz to know that she liked him. She let him know, went to his feet, went to his house, presented herself as a pleasant woman, and guess what? Boaz eventually married her. And also, Boaz, what did Boaz do? Boaz, the way he showed that he wanted Ruth, he supported her house. He sought to redeem, Naomi for what she had done. And God allowed that to happen and let that be known unto her. Alright, so before we close out, does anyone want to add on to this? Anyone?
Sure,
All right.
I'll put some add-ons on. I don't know if you mentioned it, but I remember, I think it was Chuck Missler's commentary. But so one thing some people kind of get confused is that when Ruth kind of throws her blouse or her skirt over the feet of Boaz, a lot of people think that's a sexual thing, but actually, at that time in that culture, that was actually like basically saying, "Will you marry me?"
Pretty
So
much.
when a woman in Israelite culture, when they did that, that was basically their way of saying, "Will you marry me?" So, are you interested in marrying me? You know. Some other things, because I haven't been here for the whole study. So if I'm repeating over you, let me know. But Ruth is a great book because, like, for example, one thing you see, kind of symbolically, right? You kind of see like Boaz, right, as a type of Christ, and you see Naomi as Israel, right? But then you see Ruth as the body of Christ, right? So you have like national ethnic Israel, right? The Hebrew people, and then you kind of see Ruth as like this Gentile, right? But what does she do, right? Even after her husband passes away, she tells Naomi, "Your God will be my God, your people will be my people, right? Your laws will be my laws." Right, so you see this Gentile woman. She's leaving, her pagan heathen ways, and she is stepping into the faith of the God of the Bible, right, the one true God. And so, in a sense, you can kind of see symbolically, like as Boaz is to Christ, right, as he is the kinsman redeemer, right. You can see Ruth as like the church in the sense that, as the word says, I forget where the passage is, right? But it talks about how we need to provoke national Israel into jealousy, right? So and you see that through as Israel, preached to the world about the God of the Bible, about Yahweh, right? The church is kind of preaching to Israel about their Messiah, right? And so you kind of, it's this kind of cool, like poetic kind of lesson of, Naomi introduces Ruth to the God, right, to the Creator, right? But then it is through Ruth, through her marriage to Boaz, the kinsman redeemer, that the land and the property and the inheritance of her sons, of her family, right, of her lineage, is returned to her through Boaz, right, through the kinsman redeemer. So that's like a really cool parallel when you kind of go through that book. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add. I think as you've already mentioned, you find out that Ruth is, of course, the great-grandmother of King David, right? So you kind of see the lineage of Jesus Christ, how you have these women, but you have these great, as well as Gentile women that are part of the lineage, right? And if I remember, you can help me out here, Luke, but I think when we go further back to Rahab, right, I think Rahab was
The harlot.
the grandmother, Rahab the harlot. She's an ancestor of Boaz, I think.
Yep.
Right? I don't know how far.
No, you got it. You hit it.
I can't remember if that was his like grandmother or great grandmother. That's all.
Well, it's not so many generations down. Probably like 5, 6.
Yeah. But you kind of see that Rahab is like a direct ancestor of Boaz, right? And then Boaz marries Ruth, who's a Gentile bride, and then you see, Ruth being the ancestor of King David. So you kind of see symbolically that like the concept of Israel being God's people, right? Even though they're in rebellion, even though they have fallen into sin and idolatry, right? That ultimately God's plan is to bring them back to Him, right? But then interesting enough, he uses a Gentile bride to kind of complete that loop, right? So it's like I said, the kind of symbolism and like looking at Boaz as a type of Christ is a really cool part of the study. Of course, and I guess one last thing I'll add is to kind of reinforce your statement. You know, the concept of man pursuing a woman, right? I mean, there is an element of truth there, but at the same time, you know, a woman who is, you know, in this case, you're looking for a husband, you're looking for a righteous husband, right? It is good to apply yourself. It is good to put yourself in the company of good people, right? To eventually be in the company of good men, right? So I mean, if you have, you know, whether it's at your church or congregation or friends or whatever, right? You know, if you're around good company, if you're around, you know, other Bible-believing Christians, right? At some point, you would think eventually they're going to know someone. They may have a brother or a cousin or a neighbor or whatever, right? That they'll introduce you to, right? So it's like to an extent you want a man to pursue you, but equally you need to do your part to make yourself applicable, to let yourself be known, right? And to present yourself, right, as a righteous woman, as a bride, right, as a bride of Christ, right, you know, to be known, you know, because obviously if Ruth did not present herself, right, to the kinsman redeemer, right, you know, Boaz would have never known of her character, and you know, Naomi would have never, you know, met the kinsman redeemer, right? So
pretty much.
But anyways, that's all I got. So
that was one of them. I think, like, for women, this is why I say this book speaks towards women. That whole Bible verse that, you know, we heard for years, women to be chaste. That doesn't mean a woman shouldn't pursue. Just to put it that way, a woman should pursue, especially in this case, because we got to remember, when you look at a young damsel, like a young unmarried woman, Naomi, daughter-in-law Ruth, was not a young damsel. She had to be a little bit older than your typical damsel. And guess what? She had no father to pretty much court her into marriage to another husband. You see, all the husband, you know, courting was done through Ruth, and the provision and guidance of pretty much Naomi to present herself and to pretty much make herself known to Boaz. And I'm glad you brought that context up with her, you know, veiling herself and uncovering her veil before Boaz. It's quite obvious Boaz knew what the deal was, because it wasn't sexual. But she did make herself look beautiful, though. But it wasn't sexual, but it was pretty much, can you marry me? And just think about it. Boaz looked over, you know, what she had done, knew that she was a virtuous woman, knew that she didn't abandon her, so pretty much he did the right thing. He offered, you know, any one of the elders.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or any kinsman in the city to marry her, and pretty much nobody would do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. While I was on my brain, to add one little caveat, I think Christians need to learn, like, the distinction between, like, you know, sexual promiscuity, fornication, and then sexual attraction in its biblical concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, of course, in that time and that place, right? Like, if a woman like Ruth is, you know, asking, you know, Boaz to present herself as a wife, a woman to marry, right? I mean, obviously, part of that covenant is a sexual covenant, right, or a sexual relationship. You know what I mean? So it's just you have to learn to distinct between what is like sexual promiscuity, what is lust, what is fornication, and what is sexual attraction within its natural, like, ideal context, in that, you know, God being the creator of all things, you know, a sex life being part of that, you know. If you look at it within a righteous context, I mean, it's you shouldn't get, you know, mixed signals, I guess, or whatnot, right? Like, you should understand, like, that's kind of part of the contract. But I think some people, they get that's why I kind of mentioned that, you know, they kind of get like the idea that sexual attraction is bad, but it's not sexual attraction that's bad. It's the perversion that leads to these problems, right? Like lust, like promiscuity, like fornication. But anyways, that's all.
I agree. All right. Anybody else? All right. Nobody else. All right. Let's close this thing out. James, can you close us out if you're there? All right, James.
CGU.
Oh,
man, it takes forever. The CGU and non-biblical are brought to you in part by
the Bible.
The Bible.
Oh,
All right. Until next time, this is a barely